Section 9.6 is called completing the square. And in order to complete the square, basically what we're finding is if you look at this top equation, we're finding all of these little pieces, and then what we need to find is that missing piece on the bottom. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Completing the square is one of the least favorite lessons of this chapter. It is more needed for Algebra 2, but it fits in here as kind of an introduction, and it is another way to solve. So far, we have solved by graphing. We have also solved by finding the roots. We have solved with the quadratic equation, the quadratic formula, and now completing the square. So to complete the square, there are 5 steps, and those steps that you're going to use are going to be first step is going to be to set the equation in standard form. The second step is going to leave a space after the b for a new c. And then you're going to use the equation of 1/2 of b squared and do that to both sides. You're going to set the equation equal to 0 and factor to find the solutions. So in order to do that, basically this c that we have right here is a placeholder. So we're going to find what that c is. And in order to do that, since it's not equal to anything, I don't actually have to find the solutions here. I want to take this b, and I want to do 1/2 of b, that whole thing squared. Well, half of that would be 18 divided by 2 squared, which is 9 squared, which is 81. So my new equation becomes x squared plus 18x plus 81. And if you remember in chapter 8, we talked about this is a perfect square. Since this is a perfect square and this is a perfect square, I am actually able to do x plus 9 and x plus 9, or x plus 9 quantity squared. And that's what we're trying to solve for, because if I do FOIL that back out, I end up with my original equation where my c is filled in. So again, I'm going to take that divided by 2 and then that quantity squared to find my c. So that would be x squared plus minus 10x. And then it's going to be, so since half of negative 10 is negative 5 squared, that's going to be plus 25. So again, I just took my 10 divided by 2 squared, which would be 5 squared, which is 25. And to simplify that down anymore, that would be x minus 5 and x minus 5, which is x minus 5 squared, which is what we're looking for right now. Okay, so this step gets a little more complicated because what we have here is we have an equal sign, and we want that c to be on the other side, because what you're actually going to do is you're going to do x squared minus 16x, and then we're going to do plus something equals a negative 15 plus that same something. Now we're able to add something into both of these as long as it's the same number. Because remember, whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other side to keep my equation balanced. So I do my negative 16 over 2 quantity squared. So that would be a negative 8 squared, which would be 64 and 64. Okay, so if that is the case, I can now simplify this. So my new equation is x squared minus 16x plus 64 is now equal to 49. I can break this down into x plus, that would be x minus 8, actually, since that 16 is negative. So it would be x minus 8 quantity squared equals 49. Now, the reason that I do this is because now I can go back through and I can square root everything. So I now have x minus 8 is equal to the square root of 49, which would be a positive or negative 7. So now I've got two equations I can set up, and I say x minus 8 equals 7, and x minus 8 equals a negative 7. So if I add that to the other side, I've got x equals, that would be 15. If I add that to the other side, that would be x equals 1. So 15 and 1 are my two solutions by completing the square. Okay, moving on, I'm going to do the same thing. So I've got x squared minus 2x plus something is equal to 3 plus something. All right, so I do my b, 1/2 of b squared, so half of 2 would be 2 over 2, whoops, 2 over 2, which would equal 1, and squared also equals 1. So I'm going to add that in there. So my new equation becomes x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals now 4. I'm going to set this up as a perfect square, which would be, since this is a perfect square and this is a perfect square, they would both be x minus 1, quantity squared, equals 4. From here, I can square root both sides. So I have x minus 1 is equal to, because those go away, positive or negative 2. I set up my two equations. X minus 1 equals 2, and x minus 1 equals a negative 2. I add 1 to both sides. I add 1 to both sides, and I get x equals, in this case, 3. I get x equals, in this case, negative 1. So a negative 1 and a 3 are my solutions, or the point at which it crosses my x-axis. Okay, I have a couple more here, and now this time I now have my c term on the left side. I need to move that over to the right-hand side on both of those equations. So I now have x squared plus 10x plus something is equal to a negative 8 plus something. And let's find that something, because it would be 10 divided by 2 quantity squared, which would be 5 squared, which is 25. So I'm going to put 25 on both sides. And now I have 10, x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to 17. And I'm going to have x plus 5 squared equals 17. And I can square root both sides. And this is where it gets a little tricky, because x plus 5 works, but the square root of 17 is going to be approximately a positive or a negative 4.12. So then I subtract 5, and I've got my two equations. So x equals, that would be 4.12 minus 5, and x equals a negative 4.12 minus 5. So x in this case is going to equal a negative 0.88, and in this case x is going to equal a negative 9.12. So those are going to be my solutions. Kind of messy, but it works. All right, number 6. So I have x squared plus 6x plus something is now equal to 7 plus something. That's something, let's see, would be the 6 over 2 quantity squared. So that would be 3 squared equals 9. Add those 9s in there. So now I've got x squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 16. Ooh, this is going to work out nice. X plus 3 is equal, squared is equal to 16. I can square root both sides. So I have x plus 3 is equal to positive or negative 4. I set it up as two separate problems. X plus 3 equals a negative 4. I'm running out of room. I subtract my 3. X equals 1. I subtract my 3, and x equals a negative 7. Okay, these last two are going to be the ones that are the most difficult. And the reason why is because it has a 2 out front. So we're going to divide everything by 2. Just like we multiplied everything by something, I can also divide everything by something, and it still stays the same equation. So that gives me x squared plus 10x plus something is equal to 4 plus something. So it would be 10 over 2 squared, which would be 5 squared, which is 25. And I'm going to go put those back in up here. And so my new equation is x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 29. Now that's this step right here. A lot of you may be ready to go ahead and skip and go ahead and just do x squared plus, x plus 5 quantity squared, just because you're seeing that very easily, equals 29. And let's go ahead and do the square root of both sides. And the square root of 29 is not a nice one. If I do have x plus 5 equals, that would be a positive or a negative 5.39. So I set it into two separate equations, 5.39 and x plus 5 equals a negative 5.39. Sorry guys, this video is getting kind of long. So x equals 0.39 and x equals a negative 10.39. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to divide everything by 3. And so if I go ahead and divide that all by 3, I now have x squared minus 8 plus something is equal. I'm going to take this and move it over. That's going to be 9, so it's now negative 9 plus the same something, which I don't know yet. I'm going to do 8 divided by 2, quantity squared. That would be 16, because 4 squared is 16. Add those to both sides. And then I'm going to go back to my original equation, which is x squared minus 8 plus 16 is equal to 7. So I can go ahead and square this out. And so I have x minus 4, since that 8's negative, squared is equal to 7. Square root both sides. Again, not very nice, but I have x minus 4 is going to equal positive or negative 2.65. And from here, I'm going to set up my two equations, and I'm going to end up with x equals 6.65 and 1.35. We'll do the rest tomorrow.